Y no tengamos duda, se los digo, todo lo que está pasando, todo lo que estamos haciendo hoy como gobierno fue el plan de Nicolás Maduro que aprobó él mismo personalmente. Todo. Nosotros estamos siguiendo sus instrucciones. Él dejó la línea marcada y él estaba preparado para todo. Si algo me pasa, aquí está este camino y ustedes saben lo que tienen que hacer. Aquí está el plan de la patria, aquí está el plan de las 7 transformaciones, aquí está el plan de negociación aprobado por él. Los 5 puntos que el presidente aprobó en diciembre es lo que hoy estamos trabajando. Y la prosperidad que va a conseguir el país es el plan que el presidente aprobó. Estamos siguiendo sus instrucciones con nuestra hermana mayor Delcy Rodríguez al frente de la presidencia encargada y el equipo colectivo de alto mando político. Dirección colectiva. Él siempre nos los decía.
Thousands of Venezuelans flood the streets, demanding the release of President Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, captured during a US military operation on January 3. Waving communist flags, holding Maduro's image high, protesters chant against US President Donald Trump, calling the operation an act of aggression, not justice. For them, this was not an arrest, it was a seizure. Marches stretch for kilometers across the capital, from Paseo de la Resistencia Indígena to the National Assembly, as ruling party supporters, peasant groups, and political movements mobilize in force. They say Maduro is still their constitutional president, and they warn they will not stand down.
Today, we march, the Communist Party of Venezuela, because we are deeply backing and supporting our constitutional president, Nicolás Maduro Moros, and his wife, Cilia Flores, because people love them, brave people and people of love. Nicolás, do not despair. The people of Venezuela love you. Very soon, you will be back in our country, in Venezuela. We say to Trump, free our president Nicolás Maduro and his wife Cilia Flores.
For our dignity, for our sovereignty, and the defense of independence, to tell the world, and especially Donald Trump, that Nicolás Maduro Moros is not alone, nor is Cilia Flores, and we demand that they return our constitutional and working president, because the people are here, firm, loyal, and combative. We do not want violence, but we are not standing idly by. We will remain in the streets until the other president and our first combatant are restored.
We march for the dignity of the Venezuelan people, to reject the aggression of the North American empire, to recover our president who was kidnapped arbitrarily and violently. They desecrated the homeland of Bolivar and Chavez. And we are marching to show the world, especially the North American empire, that President Nicolás is not alone, because people are willing to do whatever it takes. Venezuela, a free and democratic country, and here we want them to return the president of the people, Nicolás Maduro and Cilia Flores. They belong to us, and we are going to rescue them soon. Trump was wrong. Venezuela deserves respect. Venezuela has united people today and always. That is thanks to Hugo Chavez Frias.
As anger burns on the streets, diplomacy unfolds behind closed doors. The United States confirms a small delegation of diplomats and security officials has quietly arrived in Venezuela, assessing the potential reopening of the U.S. Embassy in Caracas, a move unthinkable since relations were severed in 2019.
Today, I held a conversation with the President of the Government of Spain, Pedro Sánchez, who reaffirmed his willingness for joint work between Spain and Venezuela, and I told him that the Venezuelan people thanked him for his bravery. I have also spoken with President Petro of Colombia. Colombia and Venezuela, the great homeland, the Great Colombia, that we march together along a single path and can address the challenges and common problems of our countries. I thank President Petro for his call and his support. I also want to deeply thank the President of Brazil, Lula da Silva, who on the same day of the aggression was very attentive to Venezuela, to the President, to the first combatant, to our people. He was very concerned about this unequal and illegitimate armed aggression. And also, that same day, when he asked me how he could help, I told him they bombed the warehouse of medicines for dialysis patients, and he immediately told me, "Do not worry, I am going to send medicines." I do not want to fail to highlight and thank the Emir of Qatar, who in the hardest hours of the early morning when Venezuela was being attacked, helped, he, his government, his prime minister, to obtain the first proof of life of the president and the first combatant. I want to thank his efforts, to thank his support for facilitating a channel of communication and dialogue between the government of the United States and the government of Venezuela, and I know that he is helping on a work agenda that is beneficial for both parties within the framework of respect for international law and respect for our sovereignty and our independence. The Venezuelan government and the government of the United States are exploring channels for the opening of embassies. For what objective? To reiterate the complaint against the aggression that our people suffered. But it is also a path to raise our banners of vindication, and it is a path that allows us to ensure the return of President Nicolás Maduro and the First Lady Cilia Flores.
Interim President Delcy Rodríguez makes it clear, Venezuela will respond, but not with weapons, with diplomacy. She says Caracas and Washington are exploring channels to restore embassies, not as surrender, but as confrontation at the diplomatic table. Rodríguez calls the U.S. operation an aggression that deeply impacted Venezuelan women, men, and children, and she warns Venezuela does not accept this treatment from a nuclear power. Still, she insists the response will be political, strategic, and sovereign.
The Venezuelan and the U.S. government are exploring channels to open embassies with the objective of reiterating the aggression that our people suffered. Our women, men, girls, and boys were profoundly impacted by an aggression of this nature. I said this yesterday. The Venezuelan people does not deserve this treatment, this aggression from a nuclear power. But our response will be at the diplomatic level. I've already said this. We will see each other at diplomacy, and we will take our Bolivarian peace diplomacy to defend the Venezuelan peace, stability, its future, to defend our independence, and to defend our sacred and non-waivable sovereignty. I want to thank the Emir of Qatar, who during the hardest hours when Venezuela was being attacked, he, his government, and his prime minister helped us to obtain the proof of life of the president, Nicolás Maduro, and the first combatant, Cilia Flores. I want to thank them in the name of the president and the people of Venezuela for facilitating the creation of a channel between the U.S. and Venezuelan governments. I know you are helping in a work agenda for it to be useful for both parties involved.
President Trump is pressing hard, urging the new leadership in Caracas to accept his vision for Venezuela's future. A future that includes reopening the country's vast oil sector, home to the world's largest proven crude reserves, to U.S. energy companies. For Washington, it's leverage. For Caracas, it's survival.
In your conversations with these oil executives today, did you provide any security guarantees so that they can do their work safely in Venezuela? Yeah. And separately, Mr. President,
they will have those guarantees, yes.
And separately, Mr. President, I'm curious in terms of the future of Venezuela.
They will have those guarantees, yes.
And separately, Mr. President, I'm curious in terms of the future of Venezuela. Do you see Venezuela now led by Delcy Rodríguez as an ally of the U.S.? Is that the way that you view that country right now?
Well, right now they seem to be an ally, and I think it'll continue to be an ally, and we don't want to have Russia there, or we don't want to have China there. And by the way, we don't want Russia or China going to Greenland, which if we don't take Greenland, you're going to have Russia or China as your next door neighbor. That's not going to happen.
You just said that these companies would have security guarantees if they go in on the ground in Venezuela.
They will have.
And what is your plan there actually for these companies and those Americans who are going to be on the ground working for these companies?
Well, there are going to be Americans. I assume they're going to be using a lot of Americans, but they're going to be using a lot of people from Venezuela and other places, I would imagine. But I would think that mostly they'll be using Venezuelan workers. They have a lot of great workers. They have a very high unemployment rate, and they have workers that are very familiar with taking oil out of the ground. Yeah.
How do you provide total security guarantees to these companies without putting U.S. boots on the ground?
Well, we're going to work with the Venezuelan leaders and people, and we're going to have a very safe group, and they're going to also bring over some security with them. You know, these are not babies. These are people that drill oil in some pretty rough places. I could say a couple of those places make Venezuela look like a picnic. These people around the table, these are tough people. They go into areas that you wouldn't want to go. They go into areas that if they invited me, I'd say, no thanks, I'll see you back in Palm Beach. I will be meeting with various representatives of Venezuela, probably pretty soon. We haven't set that up. But the relationship that we have with the people that are currently running Venezuela is very good. We also have a young lady that received the Nobel Peace Prize. She's going to come in and pay her regards to our country, really, to me. But, you know, I'm a representative of the country, nothing else. And she's coming in sometime next week, I think Tuesday or Wednesday. And we'll see how that is. But no, we're dealing with the people from Venezuela. We're dealing with them very well. I think they've been very smart in the way they've dealt with us, frankly, because that whole place could have been obliterated with one more strike, and we didn't want to do that.
Venezuela now stands at a crossroads. Its former president in U.S. custody, its streets filled with loyalists, its armed groups on alert.
When we heard the news, rather than feeling disappointed or sad, we felt angry. Let's go into battle. We're ready for this. No one here is bowing their head. We're not afraid of anyone. We're ready for anything, to defend our territory, to fight off any aggression. Betrayal is everywhere. We cannot point the finger at anyone until the authorities say how things happened, how they went down. It's just impossible. It's impossible that our president was taken away like that. It's impossible. They would have needed inside help. This is not an arrest. It's not a matter of apprehending a criminal. He is the president of the republic. This was a kidnapping carried out in total violation of international law. We know that all the charges against our president, Nicolás Maduro, are completely false. Well, we were actually surprised, but at the same time, we reacted as men and women who were prepared should. We didn't expect it, but we quickly prepared to coordinate in our areas so we could control our entire parish. Today, Lucifer himself, Donald Trump, revealed how he took the Veneta, the code name of the house where Maduro was captured, to remove the commander-in-chief from us. Today, he is mocking us. With anger and rage, we should be fighting hand-to-hand. Of course, not hand-to-hand. Of course, they, the US, beat us in technology, despite all the support we've received from Commander Putin, China, and North Korea in our war efforts. But as I said, how can we react in real time when they have better technology than we do? That's what happened. As I said, we still don't know where the betrayal came from, but it had to come from someone very close to our commander. That wouldn't have happened to the Comandante with his people around him. We want to know what happened there, but in the meantime, we are sticking to our strategy of protecting our space and territory. Delcy Rodríguez needs all of our support and blessings right now because she has shown that she deserves it. Her father was also assassinated by the CIA, as was George Rodríguez Sr. We cannot doubt Delcy. Delcy has a history, and that is that her father was also assassinated by the CIA, and I do not believe that a person whose father was assassinated by the CIA, today being a great representative of our homeland and above all a woman, is going to sell out. No, that is a lie. Those are the fascist scenarios that want to make it seem like the patriot Delcy Rodríguez is playing games. No, she is being smart.
And its diplomats quietly reopening doors once slammed shut. Is this the first step toward a diplomatic thaw, or merely the calm before a far more dangerous confrontation? The world is watching Caracas, and history may be turning once again.